All right. So we start off with just a question. How many here right now of you have like a relationship that you're having a hard time communicating with to a person, and it's like a love person, and you're having a hard time communicating with them? Hands up. You can be honest. There's no, it's no one's here. If you guys look around, there's quite a few hands up. So it's quite an important topic. So this really what I'm going to talk about. It's we're doing the book Keep Your Love On by Danny Silk, and this chapter is all about how to communicate properly and how to communicate the truth that's inside of you, right? Because you see, proper communication is key to release the emotions in your heart, right? When you communicate properly, you release what you're truly feeling inside, and if we don't do that, then we're going to get trapped, and all our emotions are going to be trapped inside of us, and that's not a good thing, believe me. All right? And it makes our relationships healthier if we communicate properly. So our heart condition is what governs our minds and our actions and what we say, right? So if we act a certain way, it's all dependent on the inclination of our heart. It's all about our heart stance. So where your heart stands determines what you will do, what you'll say, what you'll think. And so it's really like a cause-effect relationship of how your heart stands. And so if we don't properly communicate and have these healthy relationships, our heart's going to be inclined in a different way. And then it's going to be harder for us to communicate what we really want to say. Right, so I have a verse here, Matthew 15:18. You have it in your notes, and most of my verses today are from the New King James, or the NLT, or the NIV, or the AMP. So they're really kind of all over the place. But I think you have the reference there just in case you go home and you want to check it out after. So Matthew 15:18 from the NIV, it says, "But the things that come out of the mouth come from the heart." So you see, like I just said, it just supports that. Like, what comes out of our mouth is reflective on what our heart is and where it stands. So it's really important to have a proper communication. All right. The one thing that steals communication away is fear. Danny Silk puts it as, fear is the greatest hijacker of proper communication. I mean, there's so many fear-driven excuses for us not to communicate properly. And there's for me, and there's also like for other people, kind of fear stance. Anyways, we'll see it more in depth in a couple minutes. So I'm going to start off by telling you the powerless ways to communicate. There are 3 powerless ways to communicate. There's the passive communicator, the aggressive communicator, and the passive-aggressive communicator. All right? And as much as these are ways to communicate, it's not necessarily people, but yes, it's because of our heart stance. You are a passive-aggressive communicator if you're a passive-aggressive person, right? It's because of the heart inclination, like I just said. And so these are methods of communication, but it's also reflective on the character that you are, okay? So let's start off with the passive communication. So the core belief of the passive communication is that you matter and I don't. That's a passive person. They believe that you matter and I don't. Right? If we're in an argument and I just want to avoid completely this argument, I'll just say, yeah, you know what? You're right. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You're just right. You're right. And they'll just keep saying that until the conversation ends, basically. And it's just to avoid confrontation. So they avoid saying their emotions for the fear of the truth and how you'll react it. Because if I'm passive, I'm scared that if I tell you what I'm actually feeling, you're going to reject me or you're going to judge me for that. And so there's that fear, so I don't actually say what I mean, and I just say, oh, it's my fault, I'm sorry. And that's a passive communicator, but it's very weak and it's very wrong. It's not a healthy way to communicate. And sadly, there's a lot of things that happen in our life that can make us a passive communicator. Let's say, like, I know for a fact there's some households that, like, when you share your opinion, you get grilled for it, or like, let's say your boss, you talk to your boss and you give your opinion to your boss and he just completely shuts you down, and that will almost like force you to be like, okay, well, next time I can't actually say what I'm thinking. But that's, as much as it's like almost you have to, at the same time, it's not really healthy because you'll adopt that for all of your relationships. And if you adopt that for all your relationships, then you're going to be passive and you're never going to get your point across. And then all these emotions are going to bubble up inside of you, and eventually it's just going to bottle up and it's going to explode because you have no way of ever dealing with it and never actually talking about it and getting it out. That's the problem with being a passive communicator. So I have here Colossians 3:21 from the AMP version. It says, "Fathers, do not provoke or irritate or fret your children. Do not be hard on them or harass them, lest they become discouraged and sullen and morose and feel inferior and frustrated. Do not break their spirit." So you see, here it's specifically talking about fathers, and it's saying, don't irritate or provoke them, and don't be hard on them, or else they'll become discouraged, sullen, and morose. And that's really the passive person. You know, it's through experience, they just get shut down, and so they feel like it's not safe for them to tell their real emotions. But at the same time, the passive communicator is basically telling a lie because they're not actually saying their real opinion. So they're basically lying, which, if you guys aren't sure, that's not a good thing, just in case you were wondering. And also the main thing with passive communicators is that they devalue themselves, but it's not for the other person's gain, it's for their own selfish protection. That's the main thing about passive communicators, is that it's not for the other person, they do it for themselves. It's not like, oh, I'm sorry, you're right. It's not for them, but you're doing it to protect themselves so they don't get in that situation where they feel uncomfortable and they have to really express what they're really feeling, because then it's an awkward situation for them. Right. So, how do you detect a passive person? Well, there's some, obviously in every example, there's the really obvious one, right? There's, like, they rarely make decisions, and it's like, oh, where do you want to go to eat? I don't mind. You choose. It's okay. You can choose. I don't mind. I can eat anything, really. And I mean, to some people, yeah, that's true. Some people just don't care and they can eat anything. But if they can never make a decision, it's like, oh, what kind of shoes do you want? Oh, I can't decide between all these shoes on the rack. I mean, it's like, okay, really? Like, your selection's everything, But some people just can't make decisions, and that's a sign of a passive person. They avoid conflict because they don't like it. Right? A passive person won't engage into conflict. Well, no one really wants to engage into a conflict, but if you're in that situation, no one will really, like, a passive person won't like it, and they'll try to get away from it. So if you see a person that really dislikes conflict and really always tries to avoid it instead of try to solve it, that's another sign of a passive person. And if ever they're confronted, they'll just mostly agree and take the blame and try to just okay, let's just finish this conversation and end it right here because I'm really uncomfortable right now. That's really how a passive person is. And I mean, I know quite a bit about being passive because I was pretty passive myself before. I'm going to tell you a bit about when I went to Boston back in December. I went to Boston to go through RTF deliverance. RTF is Restoring the Foundation. And I went with Rev Bev and Papa Tony, and we had a great time. And so basically, for those of you who don't know what Restoring the Foundations is basically they go through all of your ungodly beliefs that stem from your identity, from ever since you were born, and they basically take it out of you, and they replace it with the godly truths of the counterfeit. And so basically, you're there and you adopt that mindset and you adopt those godly beliefs. And so one of the sessions, we had gone through all of these ungodly beliefs that I had. And then we had a nice big whiteboard, and we were able to write everything, all the ungodly beliefs on the whiteboard. And we made a tree, which we had the root identity that was false, and then it stemmed off into many different directions. Okay, and then it was all lies that I had believed, and it was really great. It's a nice little tree with all the lies that I believed in my life, and it's a great picture. But but then one of them was about being passive, and basically we concluded together through prayer and discussion that I was very passive as a person. I hated conflict, and I would avoid it. And instead of settling it, I would just stand back, and I'd rarely make any decisions. And it was because I had gone through many events in my life, like as a child and also growing up, where like I would actually say my opinion, and then like I would just get like shut down for it, you know. And so that caused me to like almost bottle up, and I know that, and so it came out and we talked about it. And then after the godly belief of that, though, which we discovered was, instead of being a passive communicator, it was really to be a peacemaker. See, there's a big difference between being passive and being a peacemaker, right? The passive communicator just avoids and steps back, while the peacemaker actually comes in to settle the problem and bring peace to a situation, right? And so that's how really we need to be. We need to be peacemakers and not passive communicators. All right. So that's the passive communicator. Now we're going to move on to the second one, which is the aggressive communicator. The aggressive communicator. So the core belief of the aggressive communicator is that I matter and you don't. That's the aggressive communicator, right? He's motivated by fear, by selfishness, and it's powerless. You know, the aggressive communicator, it's all about that person. You know, it's kind of like a T-Rex. T-Rex, if there was like a food chain of all the different types of communication, like the aggressive communicator would be at the top because it's all about him. It's like a T-Rex, you know? And so it's really funny because you can see sometimes that there's like couples where one's the aggressive communicator and the other one's a passive communicator. And you know, it's really a great couple because one of them, it's all about them, and the other one, it's everything but them. So they really go hand in hand. It's quite frightening. You know, but Danny Silk uses it as, calls the passive communicator as a goat, you know, and the T-Rex, obviously, for the aggressive communicator. And, you know, and it's like the T-Rex just keeps wanting pieces of the goat, you know, it keeps going after it, and the goat just gives off little limbs until eventually the goat has nothing left to give because he's dead, and the T-Rex is still hungry, you know, and that's really the relationship that's there, and it's bad. But the aggressive communication, it's very like, I need control of the situation. That's really what it's all about, because they have a fear of not being in control, and so they use aggression to their advantage to get that. But if they don't have it, or if they feel like they don't have it. So I have a verse here from the New King James Version this time. Proverbs 15:1. It says, "A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." Yeah. It says, a harsh word stirs up anger. You know, it's like, oh, okay, well, since it says that, I'm going to be soft. Because if I'm soft and it says it turns away wrath, okay, yeah, but that's not an excuse to be passive. Right? Don't get it confused. Just because it says, oh, you have to be soft. No, the way I read it is you need to be delicate in the way you communicate. It's not about being passive. It's not an excuse to be passive. You can't be harsh either. But just be delicate in the way you deliver information and how you communicate with someone. And then you'll be golden. Right. So how do you detect an aggressive person? Well, I mean, sometimes it's pretty obvious. I mean, they start to shout, and they really, like, raise the tone of their voice to get their point across. You know, I don't know how many of you know Bill Cosby. It's not like Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby, when he talks, he slows everything down, and he talks like this to get his point across. You know, but you know, he's more like the passive communicator is very aggressive. I don't know how many of you have seen Pulp Fiction. You know, it's like, can you tell me where the suitcase is? Oh, it's over there. I don't remember asking you anything. Samuel Jackson? Anybody? No? Okay. But you know, it's very aggressive, and they raise their tone of voice and they start yelling, and it's because they need that control. Right? So that's how you can detect a person. And oftentimes aggressive people will say things that are very hurtful. They'll jab you in that place that hurts just so they can manipulate you and get control of what they want. That's aggressive people. So that's the way you can recognize them. I know, for an example, I mean, what I'm about to say is not true all the time, okay? But European households, Okay? And this is not, I mean, okay, this is also for other cultures. I agree. I understand. But I know from experience and observation, I'm not going to say it's all my house. No, that's not true. Observation of friends and stuff. European households tend to have this understanding that if you need to get your point across, you need to raise the tone of your voice. It's just like a underlying, like, that's just how it goes. And you can have like a debate about who finished the milk and didn't change the bag. And it's like, I didn't change the milk. I didn't finish the bag. And it's like, why are you screaming? You know, this could easily be resolved just by communication. But I don't know, it might be a European thing. But I'm sure my European brothers and sisters out there can vouch for me. Yeah. See, I'm not making this up, guys. Europeans, man. It's a great lifestyle. I love it. But yeah, that's really the aggressive communication. It's all about getting control and anger. And anger is not really a good feeling to have all the time. So, all right. So now we're moving on to the third one. It's the passive-aggressive communication. Yeah, now this one is, it's really tricky because this one, the core belief is that you matter. Actually, no, you don't. That's the passive-aggressive communicator. He pretends like you matter, but in reality, you don't matter. That's what they try to do. I'm not saying that, okay, I'm not a passive-aggressive communicator. I'm not trying to say, like, Mike's like, oh, wow, this is heavy. I say, Mike, easy there, Mike. All right? But the passive-aggressive communicator is the most devious and it's the most manipulative. It's very tricky. You know, the way I see it is, like, out of the three, this one's like the mastermind of the operation. Like, this one, they try to trick you into believing that, like, they're your friends and stuff, you know, and then they go behind your back and they start saying stuff, and they really want to have control secretly. So it's the worst part of being passive, and it's, like, the worst part of being aggressive. Passive-aggressive. You know, it's like, they're like, whoa, what do we call this new phenomenon? Well, sir, it's halfway between passive and halfway between aggressive. Well, it's called passive-aggressive. That's literally how it went down. That's how they found the name for it, passive-aggressive. But, you know, oftentimes we see it in Christians, and I mean, obviously you'll see some of these too in non-believers, but like from a Christian point of stance, like, because I mean most of us here are today, and a lot of times we use sarcastic innuendos. And, okay, I know that a lot of you might know that I'm kind of a sarcastic person. And, guys, you're too modest. You're too modest. Okay. But the way I use sarcasm is in humor. And so it's, okay, Pastor Dave. But obviously there's a differentiation between being passively aggressive to actually hurt someone and being passively aggressive into humor. I'm not saying that what I do is okay. I'm not trying to make any of that up. But what I'm saying is that just be cautious because I know, especially by experience, that it's very easy to hurt people who are not on the same page and who don't know that about me, right? Because I have hurt people in the past and I've had to apologize and say, listen, I'm very sorry. You know, that's my humor and I didn't mean to offend you. And so if you come talk to me and I say something that's maybe funny, maybe not to you, I'm really sorry, and I apologize in advance. But my intention is never to offend anyone. But that's why you have to be very careful with being sarcastic. But a lot of Christians use sarcastic innuendos to get their point across in such a way where it's like, oh, wow, you look fat in that dress. Mark, did you really just say that? And I'm like, no, I'm just kidding. Come on, you know, I'm just joking. But in reality, my heart says, no, I wasn't kidding. You know? But that's what, it's like our way of being mean. It's like our way of being mean without having to look like the bad guy. We use sarcasm and sarcastic innuendos. Something else we use is veiled threats. You know, there's this theory in business. I had to take a class called organizational behavior. And in the class, we talked about how to deliver bad news to employees. And there's a theory that we learned. I'm not going to give you the name of it on the streets, but like we can call it the sandwich theory, okay? So basically, it's like you have like a positive feedback, negative feedback that you want to say and correct, and then another positive feedback. So basically, let's say if you, let's say someone's kayaking, you know, and you say like, oh, buddy, you're doing great, you know, you're working really hard and all this stuff, but when you do your stroke, try to finish it off in a J. It'll give more momentum to the boat, and it'll go straighter, and it'll go faster. But you're stroking really hard, and you're putting a lot of effort into it. Good job. That's a sandwich. It's like I gave you a positive reinforcement, and then I gave you the negative thing that I wanted you to correct, and then I gave more positive feedback to encourage you, right? Well, that's the same thing. It's just that instead of like a negative thing to like improve, it's really just a threat. That's what a veiled threat is. Really just like, okay, well, we'll camouflage this threat with like all this good stuff. But really what I want to say is this, because I really want to like get to you. You know, it's like our way. It's like sometimes we have anger that rises up and we just want to like kind of poke them, but we don't want to come out and just say it straight on, because then we'll look like a villain. You know, like Richard Sherman. Okay, no one probably knows who that is. They also use manipulative use of scriptures. You know, they'll use like, oh, well, you know, God judged and destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, so he'll judge and destroy Montreal if no one gets saved and no one gives life to Christ. It's like, whoa, like what? You know, like people misuse. Okay, that was a very extreme example, but some people will use scripture to basically back up their point, where it's like, oh, well, you know, God said this, he'll destroy you of this and all this stuff, and it's like, wow, I can't even like, how could you even like say stuff like that? But they'll use scriptures to back up their point, even though it's totally unbiblical, and even though it's totally, the verse is taken out of context completely. And that's very wrong. You should write that down. Another thing is also judgments that come in the form of counsel and withholding love. You know, if I'm counseling someone, it has to be all about the person I'm counseling. You know, it can't for a moment be about me, but I can't also say like, it's like, oh, I did this today, you know, and I'm supposed to counsel them, and like, let's say, oh, I sinned this way. I can't just say like, well, yeah, obviously it's because you did this, you know, that's not counseling. You think the person's going to come back for session number 2? Like, no, they're not going to come back. You have to like, with love, you know, and it's the same way when we communicate. You have to counsel them in love. But sometimes we withhold that love, and it's like almost like a punishment. It's like, yeah, we try to find like a cause and effect for what happened in their situation. In reality, counseling is just like encouraging and building them up and telling them that they need it and just giving them like the positive, that's speaking life. You know, we need to speak life. Come on. All right, so I have a verse here. It's Psalm 55, 20 to 21 in the NLT. And you know how like in the Psalms there's like a little, there's like writing in a smaller font before the chapter actually starts, and it says stuff like, you know, like to the chief musician, whatever. Well, for Psalm 55, it says, to the chief musician with stringed instruments, a contemplation of David. So I was wondering if anyone wanted to go play some stringed instruments while I read this verse. It'll make it sound really spiritual. It'll be nice. And we could really like reenact it. No one? No one can play guitar? Okay. That's okay. We can do it without the music. That's fine. I was just, you know, it'd be nice to have some music. All right. Sure. Yeah, why not? Awesome. Does that mean I should like sing it? Yeah? Okay. No, no. Okay, I won't sing it. I'll poetically speak it. Is that? Sing? No, I have to go with the beat though. Just like a calm, very soothing, contemplating tone. Okay, so the verse is 20 to 21. In case you're trying to follow me. He has put forth his hands against those who are at peace with him. He has broken his covenant. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet they were drawn swords. Oh, David. And so basically, so in this verse, as you can see, it just says that the words were smooth as butter. And it's like very like calm words, but war was in his heart. You see, and it's like a double entendre. It's a double-edged sword. He has double intentions. Thank you so much, God. That was amazing. Come on, guys, give it up for Scott. That was great. That was great. Wow. If I could read all the Psalms like that, it'd be great. Yeah. Awesome. But that's exactly what it is. It's a double-edged sword, you know, and it's double intentions. You know, they say things that might seem like smooth as butter, but they actually, like, the inclination of their heart is in the wrong place, and they actually want to do harm. That's the passive-aggressive communicator. You know, when you think of it, it's really considered betrayal. You know, it's two-faced. You know, like, I'm a big Batman fan. You know, Two-Face. It's like that. It's betrayal, because it's like you're earning the person's trust on the surface, and then like you just go to the room and it's like you're just bashing them. Yeah, and well, obviously it's not right. You know, and the way Danny Silk explains it in the book, I love it. He calls it a chocolate-covered dragon. You know, it's like you're like, oh, chocolate, and then you start eating, and then it's like, what are all these scales? You know, and it's like a dragon. And dragons aren't friendly creatures. Like, that's something that y'all should know. Dragons just aren't nice. You just don't go close to dragons if ever you see one. But, yeah, you know, and it's really just like, it seems like something on the outside, but on the inside it's something completely different. You know, I have a friend who told me this story one time, and just to protect their identity, I'm going to name this person Gertrude. But I don't know why I'm laughing. That's a real name. Like, guys, Gertrude. People have that name. Like, be respectful, please. No, I'm kidding. But just because it's Gertrude doesn't mean that the person is a girl. Just letting you know, it could be a male. But I mean, well, I'm not saying the name Gertrude could be manly. Come on, guys. Okay. But, you know, it's like I'm just trying to hide their identity. Anyways, so this person told me that there was someone in their extended family who started dating this man. And the man was very charming, very nice. Yeah, he was well off. He had some good money, and he was very smart. And everyone in the family met him, and they all liked him instantly. You know, and you know, so eventually they got married. But then after they got married, the wife who married the man found out that he was actually very aggressive, and he was actually affiliated with some gangs. And you see, but the thing is, like, the whole family went through, like, okay, you know how you have to, like, get, like, family's approval, you know? Everyone's, like, standing in a line, and you're like, okay, like, do I approve this guy, or do I not approve this guy? You know, but the whole family liked him. The whole family approved him and said, oh, wow, this guy's, like, a really good guy. And then they all found out that he actually wasn't that person. You know, and that's exactly it. That's the chocolate-covered dragon. So, with that in mind, just make sure you know someone before you marry them, okay? I mean, most of us are probably already married, but for those young people coming up like me, I see you over there in the corner. Like, make sure you know the person. All right. So, how do you identify a passive-aggressive communicator? And see, this is probably the hardest one to identify, because if you're usually able to identify this person as passive-aggressive, it's usually because you're the victim of the aggressive part. You know, you're there and he's aggressive to you, but everyone else on the outside sees him as, oh, look, chocolate, you know? And everyone sees him as a nice person. I say him, I'm not necessarily, it's not just a man. Yeah, Gertrude, that's right. But that's it. Everyone else on the outside sees him as all nice and cuddly, but you actually see him because you're the victim. You see that he's actually aggressive. So it's really hard to recognize it. But let's say you're not in that relationship. I mean, sometimes it's harder because a lot of people are really good at covering it up. But it's usually recognizable in the mood of the person. You know, you can see it like sometimes in their body language, that they don't actually mean what they're saying. You know, and sometimes you'll notice it. Sometimes you can pick it up. I mean, I know Pastor Dave, he's so spiritual. He just has this knack of determining, like, what kind of mood you're in. I mean, it must be God-given, really. But, you know, like, you can tell sometimes by the mood someone's in if they're being honest with you. You know, and there's obviously, like, those extreme examples of, like, everyone's either experienced or at least seen on TV the girlfriend who's, like, really mad and just, like, not really saying what she has on her mind. You've either been there or you've seen it. I know that for sure. So, like, it's exactly that. You know, you can tell by the mood, you know, by the body language, arms crossed, pouty face, you know, mumbling kind of thing. Like, sometimes you can tell like that. That's really obvious. But sometimes it's not so obvious. Sometimes you can tell in the intonation of their voice. You know, some people just have a naturally sarcastic tone of voice. And I think, sadly, I'm one of those people. Because I know I've tried to be honest sometimes, and people just start bursting out laughing, and they're like, I'm like, why are you laughing? They're like, because you're making a joke. I'm like, I'm actually just trying to be honest right now. So that really doesn't work out well. But sometimes you're able to tell in their tone of voice, you know, that you can be like, I don't know, I don't feel like that person's really like saying what they actually think. And so that's another way to recognize it. But it's the hardest, so I would say the best thing to do is pray about it. I mean, hey, it's a good way to increase your discernment, so go for it. I mean, but it's hard. I mean, especially if you're in that situation where you're the victim. It's hard because other people don't believe you, and other people are like, really? No. But, you know, if you're in that situation, you really need help, just pray for strategies, and, you know, God will give you, for sure. For sure. All right. So, now I've just told you the 3 powerless ways to communicate, right? I was like, that's great. Now you know how to not communicate. But now I'm going to tell you the proper way of communication, which is assertive communication. Everybody say assertive communication. Right. So the core belief of assertive communication is that you matter, and so do I. Wow. Yeah, it's what a perfect world. You matter, and so do I. So assertive communication is completely truth-based. You can't be hiding anything. You can't be lying. In a relationship, and I'm not just saying like husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend relationship. I mean like relationship, friends, all kinds. You just have to be truthful. All right? Assertive communicators have to be able to be powerful, but also be able to let the other person be powerful if necessary. All right? So that if you don't have the control of the situation, or if you do, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant because you're not trying to gain something over someone else. It's really like a co-laboring thing. Assertive communicators care for what's on the inside, right? And they cherish it, and so they will communicate properly so that that is protected inside of themselves and also inside of the other person, the other party involved. Right? So they refuse to become any of the 3 other communicators. Assertive communicators won't be passive, they won't be aggressive, and they won't be passively aggressive. And they're not afraid to be vulnerable. You know, oftentimes people are afraid to be vulnerable because they don't want to get shut down. You know, it's like the passive communicator. But also, you know, something I've noticed is like you're scared to fully love someone, not necessarily in a romantic way, but just as a friend. Like you're scared to fully love them because you're not sure if they're going to show the same amount of love in return. And you don't want to be that person to love so much, and then it's like, well, I don't actually care that much for you. You know what I mean? It's like, it sucks being on the receiving end of that. And so because of that fear from that, a lot of people won't be vulnerable. But it's important to be vulnerable in a relationship for an assertive communicator. So I have here Ephesians 4:14-15 from the NLT. It says, then we will no longer be immature like children. We won't be tossed and blown about by every wind of new teaching. We will not be influenced when people try to trick us with lies so clever they sound like the truth. Instead, we will speak truth in love, growing in every way more and more like Christ, who is the head of his body, the church. See, so when we speak in truth, just by speaking in truth with one another, we become more and more like Christ. And you know, oftentimes, we have this connotation. I know I've heard this before, that like couples that go through struggles together, that go through trials together, they have a stronger relationship and a stronger bond. I mean, that might be true, but you don't have to go through bad times to get a better relationship. You know, you don't have to go through like the darkest of the dark, the deepest of the deep, the worst of the worst. Like, you don't have to go through that time with your significant other to have a strong relationship. If you properly communicate, if both of you properly communicate, that bond will just create naturally. And you won't have to go through all those bad times. And when they come, actually the bad times will be even easier to go through because you already have a better connection. All right? Assertive communication is so important. That's the way we need to communicate all the time with everybody. You just got to speak in love, you know? So that's assertive communication. So now I've told you the 3 powerless ways. What are they? Passive, aggressive, passive, aggressive. Right. Avoid those at all costs. And we have the one good way to communicate, which is assertive communication. Right. And I told you how to be able to identify them now. So you're able to now identify those types of communication in others. You're going to identify others who are like that, but you'd also find patterns of those in yourself. And then now you know how to replace it, and you be an assertive communicator. So how do you respond to fear-based communicators? Let's say like you're at work or something, because you know not everyone is perfect. I mean, I know I'm not even perfect. So, oh, she's laughing because she's like, oh, that's true. No. So to a passive communicator, how do you communicate to them? You usually tell the passive communicator, what are you going to do about it? Because see, the passive communicator, it's all about, oh, I'm sorry, it's this. It's like, oh, I don't want any conflict. But you want to try to get a passive communicator to get to a point where they have to take an action and actually do something. So what are you going to do about it? You try to push them in that direction to get them to make an action. I don't know. What are you going to do about it? Okay, well, I guess I'll do this. Right. Boom. And then it forces them out of that place of comfort where they usually are, hiding behind passivity, and it forces them to take actions. For an aggressive communicator, I mean, if someone's screaming down on you, you're like this, and they're like this, you know, and like with the finger and everything, like, what do you say to that? Well, in the most respectful way possible, I can only talk to you when you choose to be more respectful. Or you can go for Mike for counseling, everybody. But you know, that's it. You respectfully tell them, I can only talk to you when you're going to decide to be more respectful. I will not engage in this like battle of emotions right now. All right? And for a passive-aggressive communicator, if you pick it up, if you're able to pick it up, because not everyone's like affiliated with a gang, so let's just be honest. Like, most people aren't affiliated with a gang, so you're not going to get into that extreme situation. But if you notice someone is passively aggressive and they're being that with you, you can just say, well, we can talk later when you choose to tell me what's really going on, or when you choose to tell me really how you feel. And then you can just like walk away and like put your shades on and feel all cool. No. But that's it, you know. We can talk later when you choose to tell me what's really going on. That's how you can deal with a passive-aggressive communicator. And that'll get them to think, and then maybe they'll be honest with you. Hopefully. And you can pray. That's always a good thing to do. Pray. All right. So now you know how to deal with those people. I'm just going to give you, before we close, I have a couple minutes left, just a couple main things about communication, proper communication, right? And so this is really just like basic stuff that it's always good to just remember and keep in mind that using the right words is so important. I mean, I have a verse here from Proverbs 18:21. It says, New King James Version, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. I mean, there's so many other verses, but this one clearly says, like, death and life are in the power of the tongue. You know, the power of our words it's really significant. And so we really need to be careful, and we have to choose the right words, you know. And it's like my parents always told me, you know, think first and reply after, you know. Speak later. And it's really important to choose the right words, because you can destroy a relationship in a matter of seconds if you choose the bad words. Next one. Speak life. You know, we have to speak life. Always. You know, it's like, first of all, what's even the point of speaking bad about someone? It doesn't edify you. It doesn't edify the other person. So there's absolutely, like, no gain out of it. And we do it out of anger, we're thinking that it will bring us satisfaction, but it actually doesn't. We just need to speak life. I have a friend, and his little sister going through a rough time right now, and I just had the chance to just speak life into her and just tell her, and she was really encouraged. And sometimes people, that's all they need. They just need to have life spring forth so they can just shoot their springs up in a fountain analogy type thing. But they just need life, When people are encouraged when you speak life, it's I believe in you. I believe in you. You can do it. I have no doubt that you're going to get through this. You're strong. You're good. You're brave, You can do it. People need that encouragement. All right. The goal of communication, it cannot be agreement. It has to be understanding. Because talking is not communicating. You can talk and just talk for nothing. But communication has a goal and a purpose. Yeah. Yes, that's right. The goal of communication has to be understanding. Because if it's about agreement, eventually it'll come to a point where it's just a battle of prides clashing, and then it won't be about, okay, let's get to this goal and this purpose. It won't be about that anymore. It would be I have to prove to you that I'm right, that my view is better, that my view is right, and yours is wrong. And then that's not communication, because that just destroys relationships. It's a relationship killer. That's exactly what it is. And it comes to a point where you're devaluing the other person's emotions. And that's not healthy. And I just get the picture of a father, let's say, and a daughter going to a roller coaster, or a son going to the theme park, and they want to go on the roller coaster. And then the son or daughter says, "Daddy, I'm scared about going on the roller coaster." And the father has two choices, really. He can just reply, "Oh, I understand that you're scared, and it's normal to feel scared, but don't worry, you can overcome it, you can do it, and I believe that you will be able to do it, and you'll be fine." Or there's, "That's stupid, why are you scared?" And you can totally shut down the kid's emotions. And sometimes we do it without even thinking, and we think, sometimes you don't even realize that you just totally shut them down, but sometimes that's what happens. And that could actually lead to the kid after being passive, because they're scared to open up in the future. You understand? And so it's very important we have to respect each other's emotions. And especially in a relationship with your partner or in friendships, if someone comes to you and is vulnerable, you can't take that for your advantage. They're trusting you with their vulnerability. So what are you going to do with it? Are you going to take it and crush it, or are you going to take it and handle it gently, with care? So it's really up to you, but you just got to be gentle. So we got to get rid of the facts and the cliches. People use cliches because they're so they're safe. They're comfortable and safe. The typical, "Hey, how are you? I'm good, thanks. How are you?" "I'm great, thanks." "Okay, great. Hi, bye." That's a typical conversation that you can have with anybody in the world, and it'll be okay. But I remember something that a good friend of mine told me, and he learned from his youth pastor, and that guy probably heard it from somewhere else, is that if you're going to ask someone, "How are you?" you better mean it, and you better be ready to listen. Because you have no idea when that person just needs to open up and just talk. And if you don't actually mean it, and you're just saying it as a cliche, you can actually hurt the person more before they started talking to you. So if you don't mean saying, "How are you?" you better just not say it. It's a good word right there. It's really about understanding each other's needs and their emotions and just respecting that and just getting there. We have to speak clearly, not mysteriously. And this might be just me, but I'm going to share this anyways. I used to think that there was this cool factor of being mysterious, and no one really knowing anything about me. And so I never really used to talk much. And I would just try to get that mysterious look, because I thought, "Oh, wow, that's so cool." And I wanted people to see me as being cool, and so I would be mysterious. But actually, it's really not cool, because then I'm stuck with all these emotions inside that I'm actually feeling. And since I never talk to anyone because I'm so mysterious, I'm the one dealing with everything, and it's and it eats you inside. So it's not healthy. I don't know if anyone's ever thought that, but maybe it's just me, but that was me. So I thought I would mention it. And probably the most important, be willing to listen. Yeah, we just have to be able to listen and be like a, I don't know what they call it, like an active listener. Yeah, like just, don't be like, oh, yeah, talking and like looking around, and like the person's right here talking and you're just like, yeah, yeah, for sure. It's like, well, I mean, sometimes you want to just leave, and someone's talking to you. And I can understand that, but at the same time, when you have a conversation with someone, you just want to like fully put all your attention on them, right? And just, because that shows them also that you're involved and that you actually care, because you're actually spending your time to get involved. Awesome. So now you have all this stuff, so you guys are equipped to be great communicators. If you're already great, that's awesome. And if you had some patterns of like others that you could notice and pick up, that's good, because I know I was very passive. And no, well, that's it, She said not anymore. Well, I'd like to think so. But because what they do at the deliverance is basically, it's like when you're done, they give you a list of all your godly beliefs, and you have to basically say it for 3 months. And so basically you're filling that hole that used to fill up that part of your identity with the newfound godly belief. And so I repeated it every day for 3 months. And so it becomes naturally a part of who you are. And that's really the power of words. It's really just declarations daily. So imagine just by saying like one thing daily, just by saying, like, I don't accept the lie that I'm passive, but I accept the truth that I am a peacemaker. Just by saying that every day, it'll grow into your spirit. It's like, it's crazy. Anyways, so I don't know how much time we have left. 5 minutes, okay. Why'd you use 2 hands for 5? Anyways. Oh, that's what that was, okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. All right. So I was wondering if we could maybe play some like soaking music, like get a playlist going. And if you, well, not if you want, you should just spend maybe the next 2 or 3 minutes just reflecting on. No, it's not sarcastic. I was just thanking you for correcting me, actually. Thank you, Pastor Dave. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. If you can just, get alone with God and just focus and say, God, where can I improve in my communication? What do I have to do to be an assertive communicator and a more effective communicator? If you have to come and sit in the front, go in the corners, whatever, if you have to leave your chair, that's fine. Do that and get alone with God. We'll do that for like 2-3 minutes. And then after that, if you really feel like there's a communication with someone that's not going right now, and someone that you really care about and you're having a hard way communicating with them, and it's like a very specific thing, we would like you to come up and we'll pray for that situation if you want. But we're just going to take 2 to 3 minutes. Everyone reflect. I'm going to reflect too. I'm going to be over here. And once that's over, I'll make an announcement. You'll be free to leave, but if you want to come up for altar ministry, we'll keep the music playing and we can pray for you. Awesome. Thank you.